friends, it's Dan. Welcome back. Welcome to another plastic miniature review, this time a sprue review for the Frostgrave Soldiers produced by North Star. And if you're familiar with this series, you'll know that all of my North Star reviews are sponsored by North Star because they were kind enough to send a big old box of these sprues to me for review purposes so we could check them out together. So yet again, thank you North Star for your continued support here. If you've been watching the series of late, you'll know that we're going through a lot of the Frostgrave and Oathmark human sets in the lead up to the, I think, hotly anticipated Oathmark human heavy infantry, a review for which I should have up in the next couple of days. I'm just waiting for it to arrive, but I've been following the tracking eagerly and it looks like it might arrive tomorrow, so fingers crossed. However, if you're not familiar with this series, you should know a couple of things. Normal disclaimers here. This is a sprue review, which are for sets that are comprised of just a single sprue repeated multiple times. So that way we can look at a single sprue and I can give you a really good idea of what's going to come inside of the box. And if you're not familiar with any of my reviews, welcome. What we're going to do is go through this sprue in detail. I'll give you close-up shots of everything, give you a breakdown on the bits, numbers. We're going to assemble some of these figures. I've got a lot of sets that I want to kitbash with, mostly all these human sets that we've been reviewing here over the last week or so. I will do some scale comparisons with different manufacturers in my collection, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So this was one of the first sets, maybe the first set that was put out for Frostgrave, and going into that, I just have the general knowledge that this is an older Frostgrave set. I think it's going to mirror some of my other observations with those earlier Frostgrave sets, certainly compared to the newest one, which as of the time of filming is their Cultist 3, which is that they're generally smaller in scale, and we can see that even from the size of the sprue, that it's about 50% smaller than the newest sets, like again those Cultist 3, and as a result they just have fewer bits just because there's less space. Like from a layout standpoint, things are a little bit different. Usually they have half as many heads, half as many arms. That's usually what we're missing on these earlier Frostgrave sets. But let's dive in here and look at some of these details. So if you pick up this box for yourself, again this is, I just have the one sprue, you're going to get 20 miniatures in the set, so 4 copies of this sprue. And then what you're also going to get inside of the box is 2 copies of these Renadra flat round 25mm bases, which are very nice, slightly textured on one side and then totally flat on the other, if you were curious. So bases for everybody, and again 4 copies of this sprue. So let's take a look at the bodies here up close first. And this is an interesting juxtaposition from the Frostgrave Knights, which we just took a look at a couple of days ago, in that while these are also clad in fur, which makes sense if you're not familiar at all with Frostgrave, it's a really cool rule set. If you've not looked at it, you should. But think of it like Mordheim in a snowy city. So everything's slightly winter or frost themed. Most of the miniatures have like cold weather gear, and this is no exception. And actually very nice sculpting, even considering the age. The only places where I see a little bit of like flatness is with these like aprons. There's not as much movement as we see in some of the other robes, I think. But otherwise, there's really lovely detail in like the fur on the boots there. Kind of surprises me actually, again, given the age of this set, compared to some of the other early sets that don't have as tight a sculpting as we see with like those Cultist 3. But these are actually quite nice. As I said, the only places where I see any flatness is in like the extra, like kind of apron style draping there. And a little bit of more like rounded edges to the bottoms of the tunics here, but that's a quibble more than anything. You're certainly not going to notice that painted at the tabletop level. Very nice mix of like layered clothing here. I can tell just from a glance these would kitbash very nice with like their scavengers, their cultist sets. Just to add some more body variety to those sets if you wanted to press some of those bits in. So as if I didn't mention it though, none of them have any armor. Some of them you can see have little accessories already sculpted on, like pouches, daggers, and that's always pretty cool. So from there, let's take a look at heads, and heads is the other area that's somewhat lacking with the earlier sets. Not in quality of what is here, because I think there's some very nice heads here. A good mix of like kind kind of generic Dark Age helms, some kind of early medieval helms here. These ones just like they look like they would work well with their Frostgrave crew. So nice mix of heads. There's just not that many of them. It still meets my kind of like minimum threshold. I usually say that in a multi-part plastic set I like to have at least a 2-to-1 ratio of heads to bodies, because that guarantees that in a set like this you're only going to have 2 duplicates. But I've certainly with some other sets, like even comparing Northstar to itself, some of their newest sets like the Cultist 3 I think had 21 heads per sprue, if I'm remembering right, so you could theoretically have a box of those and have no head duplicates. But again, what is here I think is very nice from a sculpting standpoint. Once again, considering just the age of this set, and a good mix of options there. So arms is the only other area that's kind of lacking compared to, again, modern Northstar sets, but they do, you can see, I mean, the sprue is crammed full. But if I go through here, you'll see some right arms up here. And everything has this glove design. This is something that I think people are generally in favor of. I certainly am. That most of the Frostgrave sets of this era, anyway, have these gloved hands, which allow for even easier mixing and matching between sets. So, you know, my general criticisms, again, of these older Frostgrave sets, just in terms of bit variety, is undercut by the fact that I think Northstar's intention is that you're going to be picking up different boxes to then kitbash together. That's certainly my recommendation anyway. But the glove design that they use on a lot of these sets helps with that even more. So it's kind of hard to categorize these right arms, but I'll do my best. So there's 5 right arms that are just holding like a single-handed weapon, like this sword here. So their arming sword, axe. You can see that all 3 of the swords present are slightly different in the style. A little fantastical for my taste. Like this is probably my favorite one, just the generic arming sword. But what's here is fine. And then there's also a spiked mace here, which is very cool. There is one right arm that is holding a great sword here, which I think looks excellent, actually. It's obviously you know, fantasy inspired, but it almost looks like something out of Skyrim. And I think that the proportions are very nice. I had a criticism of the Frostgrave Knights. Had a great sword in there that I didn't think looked proportionate for a heroic scale weapon, whereas this I think is excellently done. And then there's also one right arm that is pointing, you can see over here. So you got some options for right arms there. From there you've also got a 2-handed axe down here. And as much as I like this greatsword, I'm not as much of a fan of this. This almost looks like a evil weapon, like a cultist or an orc kind of weapon. Actually, it looks quite like the Mantic Orc Morax unit have a battle axe that looks a lot like that. So again, it's a fantasy axe design, but I would have preferred like a large version of something like that maybe. There's also a left-handed arm with a dagger. 5 empty left-handed arms, so you have enough to just give everybody nothing in their left hand if they want, never if you want. And then there's also a left arm here, which is holding a lantern, which is a nice bit, and it's actually different. I had to go back and check, because I almost thought it was the same bit that we just saw in the Frostgrave Knights. But you can see here that it's actually a totally different lantern design. And the Frostgrave Knight has a bit of chainmail peeking out underneath it too, so. But once again, showing off the glove design here, which makes kitbashing between those sets in particular very easy. And then I don't think I mentioned that there are these ranged weapons. So there's 2 bows in the center. I think these look great. Both of them are in some kind of like loosing position, shooting position. And then these 2 crossbows. And if you've been watching my Frostgrave reviews, the earlier crossbow designs are a little small for my taste, but they're fine. And then from there, the rest of the sprue is comprised of some accessories. So there's these 2 shields, which are plain on the one side, texture on the back, which is nice for painting. I actually prefer this, to be honest with you. Maybe to have like a boss on this one or something, but I prefer this approach versus like the Wargames Atlantic Guards set that we reviewed together, which had a sculpted emblem on it. I find that more limiting. I prefer just a plain surface to it and let you paint it up however you want. And then there are 10 regular accessories, 4 of which are quivers for the bolts, for the crossbows, and the arrows. for the bows, which are all slightly different designs. And then just some pouches, like a loose helmet. These 2 bits of rope, I think, are excellent bits to have in your collection. And then a couple of pouches here that kind of like wrap around bodies. So there you have it. As it sits on the sprue, I think everything is very lovely from a detail standpoint, but I'm curious to see how they go together. So let me cut here. I'm going to put some of these together. I'll do some kit bashing for you, and we'll see how they look all built up. All right, got a bunch for you here now, so let's take a look at these one at a time. So the first 2 are just going to be straight out of the box. And I think these look really good, all assembled. My impressions as I was going on were that I don't want to say it's like misbranded as soldiers, because it works just fine as soldiers, but really the feeling that I got from this set was more of like brigands. And maybe that's just due to, you know, the kind of ragtag appearance, lack of any kind of professional weaponry. But they look more like ruffians, which is cool. So this one is also straight out of the box. The only conversion is I kind of whittled down that, I said, kind of evil-looking axe into more of a battle axe shape, which worked just fine. The only other quirk about this one is I couldn't find a left arm. This is the one that seemed to be closest, which is odd for Northstar. Again, this is one of their earliest Frostgrave sets, so it's not a huge surprise in the scheme of things, but their 2-part weapon assemblies are probably some of the smoothest in the industry, like especially for Stargrave with their 2-part weapons. So let's go into some conversions here, because I think that's what you guys are mostly interested in. So this is a body from the Soldiers set. The arms and the head are from the Knights. So remember, we just looked at the Knights. If you haven't seen that review, you could check that one out. You'll see a lot of similarities with this set. That one's just a little bit more armored. You can see a little taste of that, if you will, with the chainmail peeking out there. But they scale up perfectly. Here's another one here. This is a body from this set. The arms and the head are from the Oathmark human range. The arms are from the regular humans. The head is from the light infantry, I think. And the shield is a conversion you may recognize from the human cavalry set, if I'm remembering my own reviews. So that was a simple enough conversion. I think those also scale quite nicely. Here's one with probably my favorite Northstar set, which is their Scavengers. These are the arms that I just pried off of. I think it was on the Knight body I had these on. But I think this looks great too. The Scavenger set is so versatile. You could use it with anything you want. So here we're going in the opposite direction now. So this is a body from the Knight set. The arms and the head are from this Soldier's set. So I think that this works great as well. I did find that arm, again, I think the sword looks fantastic, but it kind of leans into the head, so it limited which head options I could use with it, but I think that looks great. Here we're now going back to the Frostgrave crew, the Ghost Archipelago crew, and the arms and the head are from the soldiers. That head I mentioned would work great with the crew, and I was right. So there you go, nice little conversion there for you. Here now we're with the Scavengers, but in the opposite direction. So this is a Scavenger's body. Arms and head are from the Soldier's set. So you can see they're all scaled perfectly, and Northstar is so good about this with making sure that just about every set, I think other than their like orcs and goblins, have the same head and arm attachments, and they're all scaled identically, so they all work together quite nicely. This crossbow, I realized, I think makes a more convincing like post-apocalyptic crossbow. Perhaps because if it were that size, like it would have to be kind of like a modern design in order for it to have any kind of stopping power. Here is a human infantry. This is just from their base human infantry from the Oathmark range. And then the head and the arms are from the Soldier's set. Again, they can make some good soldiers, because anybody can be a soldier if you want, but I think they really make good like roguish kind of like bandits. This is a body from the Cultist 2, I believe. And then the arms and the head and the shield are from the soldiers. So the shield I just scuffed up to make it, cult approved. But the Cultist set, as with the Scavengers, is another one that's incredibly versatile. And then finally here, if that wasn't enough for you, this is one going back to the human cavalry from the Oathmark range. arms and head. The arms and the head are from the soldiers. The shield, I think I cheated. That's from the knights set. But just again to show you that all these sets work beautifully together, I think. Let's cut here. Let's see how they scale up on the Lazy Susan with my other manufacturers. Alright, let's take them for a spin here. So you'll see, of course, the bare plastic figures, the bodies anyway, are all from the soldiers set. A couple of them are the conversions that we just took a look at, but the bodies, the height, is all correct. Pay attention to the fact that some of the miniatures are going to have puddle or splash bases, and then some don't. These Frostgrave figures do. It adds a millimeter or two of height. But I think they scale up very nicely. The height is roughly like true scale with some of my historical plastic sets, but the proportions are all decidedly heroic scale. So what's the final verdict? I think this is a great set. It really holds up. I believe this is, if not the first Frostgrave set, it's one of the first Frostgrave sets to come out, because the subject matter is so foundational to the Frostgrave world, right? As we saw, you can certainly make these into soldiers if you want, but you can make them into like rogues, ruffians, bandits, whatever you want. And as is so typical of the North Star range, you can kitbash them with anything you want to make a really fantastic variety of figures. And so while I do have the same criticisms of most early Frostgrave sets about the number of head and arm options within the set, what is here is really, really good. And my normal recommendation applies, which is that if you're going to pick up a North Star box, my general suggestion is that you hold out until you can pick up at least two. And really, any two. That's why I do all these reviews. You can watch them all and decide for yourself which two North Star sets are going to be for you, because they all go together so well, and you'll hear me say time and again that they make each other so much exponentially better. So you're really missing out if you're not taking this set and blending it with something like an Oathmark human set, or with the cultists, right, to make some more roguish looking guys, or if you're in the sci-fi realm, some of the Stargrave range as well. They all kitbash together fantastically for uses well beyond just Frostgrave, right? Obviously Mordheim, Warhammer Fantasy, any kind of like Dark Age or medieval conflicts. There's just so much potential within a, again, foundational set like this that I don't think that you should miss out. So at a minimum, again, if you're in this space, you should pick up a Sprue at some point, just to have the bits lying around for conversion purposes. It makes me eager to see, now that we have a Cultist 3 set, which is sort of a redo of the first set that they put out for the Cultist range, whether or not the soldiers will get the same treatment. I know that's kind of the question we've got for everything now in the Frostgrave range, sort of now that the Pandora's box has been opened, so to speak. But this is another set that I think would do well to have a Soldiers 3, not only just to have some more head options, maybe some more professional looking weapons or swords, like some pole arms or some more arming sword options, maybe some more standardized shields, but even to have an option to have maybe some like light armor, because we see now with the knights that they have more armor. It's certainly more than this. I think my criticism of that set was that I wish it had more like plate in it, but even if you just had like some leather armor within a Soldiers 3 set, it would allow you to do a lot, and then you could still have this set to continue to build on. So as it stands, I think this is a staple set. It really does still hold up, and something definitely worth checking out if you've not already. Thank you yet again to North Star. I can't say it enough that without their support we wouldn't be able to do certainly even half as many of these reviews as we've been doing. So very, very grateful to you. Grateful to all of you as well for stopping by and checking this one out in the meantime. And until next time, happy gaming.